Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Jason White, and this is Jason's Weird Reads, and today I'm going to be doing recent reads from the hip. And if you don't know what the from the hip part is of my recent reads, I go into some personal things in my life where that generally affect the channel and or at least are channel adjacent, I guess. And I have quite a few things that have been going on. You may have noticed I haven't been doing videos again, but there is yet another reason for it. There's a couple reasons, actually. I'm going to get into all of them in just one second, but first I just want to say that I released my book, this bad boy right here, Attack on Sasquatch Valley, and so far the sales from this have been quite phenomenal, and I'm quite, like, not phenomenal, like nowhere near like bestseller status or whatever, but it exceeded my expectations. And so I want to thank everyone who has ordered a copy of this or read it on Kindle Unlimited. So far, the reviews that are coming in are they're all of them have been positive so far, and I think there's about 6 or 7 written reviews. I've gotten reviews that aren't on Goodreads or Amazon, like blog type reviews that have been positive as well. So again, thank you for everyone who has read this and have also reviewed it. I'm exceptionally happy with how this has gone so far. So thank you. And I have promised a couple of people, you know who you are, some physical copies of this, and I'll be getting in touch with you guys shortly. I've just been kind of backed up with other things, but yeah, I released this back in, like, I think October 21st or 2nd, and so it's been close to a month now, and I'm quite happy with how this has turned out. Stephen King once said, I just saw this quote before coming on here. He said that if you can pay a bill with a sale of your writing or with your writing whatsoever, then I consider you talented. And the money so far that I've made on this could certainly pay a bill, at least one of them. So I guess I'm talented. That was a joke, of course. But yeah, so this fall has been kind of crazy. And one of the reasons for this is because my new job, as everyone who watches my channel probably knows, I switched jobs just over a year ago, and I would say I'm doing pretty good at my new job. I've got what you could call a promotion at my new job, and so I'm at like the bottom tier of management now, but I was glad to get that position. I applied for it, and I got it. So that's caused some different situations. I'm in a different building now, and so that the work is different, and also there's some overtime. So I've been working on the weekends. My last job, you would have had to have dragged me kicking and screaming to go do any overtime. This one, I'm doing it willingly. So that should show you how I feel about my new job. I do apologize that I keep going on about it, but I'm like Stephen King. If something happens to me, I go on and on about it until it's flushed out of my system. All right, so that is one reason why I haven't been posting. I'm trying to make adaptations to it, but another reason why I haven't been posting as much is that winter is returning, and with winter comes the SAD, and this year, I don't know why, maybe it's all the changes or whatever, but I'm not alone. The people I know who also have SAD are feeling it as well, but I am seriously feeling it. I am so tired all the time. I think one reason why, I think I say this every year, that I'm feeling it extra hard this year, and I think one reason why is because you get used to feeling energetic during the summer, and when the sleepiness comes back and the desire to want to sleep all the time, when that comes back, it's hard. It's hard to adjust to. It's like being at bedtime 24/7, where you're sleepy and just want to go to sleep. And I kind of hate it, because I want to get stuff done. But whenever I do have some extra time to like shoot videos, I'm just like, do I have to? I just want to chill. So yeah, winter is coming. Winter is technically almost here. It's only about a month away, and the sun is way down in the south. I need it to be up over my head, and charging this solar panel that is me. So I generally feel like shit during the winter, and this year is no different. This is where I start to worry that I'm dying from some horrid disease. It happens every year, has for like so many years, because my body hurts all the time, more so than usual. It's easier for me to feel sick, and it's also all I want to do is sleep. I mean, it fits so many symptoms for those terrible diseases. Um, so yeah, it's difficult to get a little bit motivated. I don't think anyone who's never suffered from it can truly understand, but I hope that if you have never had SAD or don't suffer from any depression whatsoever, that the way I just described it can give you at least a little glimpse of what it is people like me go through. All right, so as such, I'm very late with this video. This recent reads is basically what I read during October, and we're already like getting somewhat close to December, so I'm going to try to keep these back up. I cut off everything that I finished in November, so I've read 10 books. I read 10 books in October, so at least I got energy for that, right? Okay, so for October, for the book club, the Jason's Weird Reads book club, we are reading 2 books. Again, we did this in September, I think it was. But we had another tie, and this one didn't break at all. This tie stuck. So I was like, you know what, we're reading. Instead of doing poll after poll after poll, trying to break it, I was like, well, there's a theme here on this one. So why don't we just stick to it and just read both books? And both books are by Paul Tremblay. So for the first half of November here, we read A Head Full of Ghosts. And for the second half, we are now reading Horror Movie. Both of them, of course, by Paul Tremblay. It's almost like the bookends, his latest release and his earliest release. So that's a lot of fun. If you want to go join us in that read or group read, just head over to the Fable app. Just a warning to anyone. I'm thinking I did a poll a while ago, and the Discord won for the place where most people would enjoy doing talking books with me in the book club. So I might switch it over, but it was very close. I don't know what to do exactly, because there's people over there in the Fable app who I don't think are on Discord. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to, I guess, ask them. So you might see a change come soon. Okay, so what am I currently reading right now? Well, I'm going to be reading Horror Movie very shortly, but I've got these other books I want to get out of the way first. And that is Sycamore by Ian Rogers. I'm going to be talking to Ian Rogers this coming Saturday or Sunday. I think it's Sunday at 6 o'clock p.m. And we're going to be discussing this book, Sycamore. And right now I think I'm creeping up on the halfway point, and this book is a lot of fun. If you ever participate in Occult Detective October, I highly recommend reading this book for that. I don't know if it's book 1 in a series, but it feels like it. At least it feels like a series. I'm going to have to look that up. But another thing I really like about this book is it takes place not only in Canada, but in the area of Canada that I'm familiar with, and I always love it when that happens. I imagine people who live in New York would be like, oh, yay, another New York book. But when you're like in central to South Ontario, it's always exciting when an author puts those places into their book. I always get excited about that. So it takes place in that. But the story is about a detective. His name is Felix. I can't remember his last name right now, but he and his ex-wife work together as PIs. He's a PI, and she's sort of his assistant. She works in the background. And he's been called up to a town called Sycamore, which is, I don't think that town exists, but it's it would be close to where I live. It's like north of Aurelia, and he mentions Aurelia, which is kind of cool, which is just north of Barrie, another town I'm very familiar with. But anyways, it wouldn't be all that far away from me if that town did exist. And he's up there because there's a series of murders happening there, and he's hired by one of the possible victims because her husband has disappeared. His truck was found, the inside of it like caked in blood, and the husband is missing. So he's been hired to go find the husband, and that's all I'm going to say about it, because the story is a lot of fun. There's something else interesting going on in this story, is that there's these portals that have opened all throughout the world, and these portals lead to another dimension that has like monsters and creatures in it, and these monsters and creatures come out into our own world, and that's interesting. So this is a pretty cool book. I love it so far. Ian Rogers, fellow Canadian. I'm going to be talking to him, as I said, this Sunday. And the next one is another interview person. Another writer I'm going to be talking to, I think, at the very beginning of December. And so I'm about halfway through Incarnate. That's by Richard Thomas. This book is interesting. It takes place in the Arctic. It's an old man who lives in a cabin, and this one has a similar feel actually to the last book, is in that there's these, like, I wouldn't say portals, but there's more like tears in the fabric of reality. Honestly, I don't know exactly what's going on in this story yet. I just know that this old man, when winter comes, it's dark all the time where he is. I think he's in like northern Alaska, and so it's like nighttime 24/7. And he's there to protect, if not the village, then the entire world from these creatures. So that's good. It's very, very entertaining so far. And I'm also just starting this. I don't know, this will probably take me a while to read, because I have all these other reading projects you could say I have to get to, but I've been wanting to get back to this series for a while. And that's Words of Radiance here by Brandon Sanderson. Now, this thing is a chonker for sure. It clocks in at like over 1,000 pages long, and that's big. I've said this on the TikTok app. I said that this is not a book, it's a weapon, and it could certainly be used as a weapon. I'm not very far in right now. I'm only on like chapter 2 or something like that, and yeah, I'm glad to be getting back into this. I've been listening to some Stormlight Archive podcasts lately, and lately I've been just wanting to read some fantasy again, because I went through a period of like 2 or 3 years where I just wasn't reading fantasy, and fantasy is like just part of what I read. I generally read horror first always, and then fantasy. So all right, speaking of fantasy, another book that took me like a good 3 or 4 months to read, because I wasn't always reading it. I would take massive amounts of breaks from reading, and that was The Wandering Inn by Pirate Abba. I finished this finally at the very beginning of October. It was like October 2nd when I stopped listening to that first book, and I really enjoyed it. This is like a very long, I think it's over 1,000 pages as well. It's very long. The basic premise is there's a young girl, I think she's like 18 or 19. She goes into a room one day and enters a different reality. This is like another portal thing. This seems to be a thing for me lately, a theme. So she ends up in this fantasy like realm where there's a dragon that tries to kill her at the beginning, but she runs away and she ends up finding herself in an abandoned inn, and she takes it over basically. And the first night after she cleans up the place a little bit, as she's about to go to sleep, this voice pops out of nowhere and says the character's name and her rank for innkeeper. And so she continues to rank up through various different skills. And of course, it's not just about this character. Other characters come. Once she opens up her inn, we're introduced to a whole bunch of other characters. And there's like these ant creatures. And I'm looking forward to continuing this series. But like I said, it could take me 10 years probably to finish the whole thing. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But I'm really enjoying it. It's kind of comforting, I think. I got the second book, and I'm going to download it at some point, thinking maybe in December at some point, and just listen to it in like 10-hour increments here and there. It's like 60 hours long. I don't know how many pages that is, but geez. Okay. Uh, for October, the group read was for the Jason's Weird Reads group read over on the Fable app. Our choice was Salem's Lot by Stephen King. And this was a reread for me, and I enjoyed it a lot. This is one of my favorite Stephen King books. And another thing, I was struck yet again by how detailed the town of Jerusalem's Lot is. You get a really clear, crystal clear picture of what this town looks like. And this was, I think, maybe one of the first times King played around with a large cast. So you have a lot of townspeople as characters in this. And we get to know them and their stories, and how Barlow and Stryker, is it, who move into the Barlow house, not the Barlow house, the house at the top of the hill. Barlow is the vampire, but and how the disease of vampirism infects the whole town. You get to see how it affects everyone and their lives. It kind of reminded me this time around of Needful Things. There's, I think, a similarity in that. There's also maybe a connection, not a connection, but it kind of reminded me a little bit of Tommyknockers as well, because that involves a whole town. I really enjoy this type of Stephen King book, and it was really awesome to revisit good old Salem's Lot. The next 3 books I read for an interview with Eric S. Brown. I have to admit that I kind of slacked off on my reading of Eric Brown for a little bit there. So he released like 3 books this year, and that's nothing new for Eric. He's a very prolific writer. So I read 3 books for the conversation. I wanted to kind of catch up a little bit. So I read Stomping Ground by Eric S. Brown. This book was a lot of fun. All his books are fun. I think he sort of focuses on plot and fun. You don't really go into Eric Brown for plot, not for plot, for character. Although he has interesting characters, there's not like huge character developments or deep, character dives. He's more about the fun, and he usually delivers that. I also read The Dark Relic. This one had a really interesting character in it. This guy who was like pale and I think he had like white hair, but he wore all black, and he wore a hat. And he was adorned with knives. This dude had like an affection for knives. He was very sketchy. He is, I think, one of my favorite Eric S. Brown characters of recent reads. And Cryptid War by Eric S. Brown. This was a lot of fun because it's like every cryptid you can imagine pops up all over the world, and these cryptids are giants, and they're like wreaking havoc. I dare you to go and download the first, or download a sample of the Cryptid War or Cryptid Wars by Eric S. Brown, and read that first chapter, because it's it's kind of incredible. So yeah, those were all fun. I enjoy reading Eric S. Brown, and I hope to talk to him again soon. He's one of my favorite writers, honestly, from like way back in the 2010 era. All right, and I should mention also that I was very happy to talk with him. I didn't think he would want to when I asked. I think I mentioned this in the interview itself, but he said, okay, let's do this. So I was very happy about that. All right, next up, I read Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison. This book was a lot of fun as well. I don't think I had any books that I really hated in that month of October. No, there's not. Okay, so Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison. That's actually hard to say really quickly. But this book I started at the very same day when I started my new position at my job. And so I mentioned in another video, I forget where exactly, it might have been on the Patreon, that I didn't like it at first. And I was like, oh no, this is only my second Rachel Harrison book. What do I do if I continue to not like it? But I soon realized that, it was like the stress of a brand new position and a brand new building. I was more focused on that stuff than reading this book, and so the book was more of an irritant than anything else. So once I got a little more comfortable where I was, I started to really enjoy this book. It had nothing to do with the book itself, because when it was done, I went and re-listened to the first quarter of it, the part that I hated, and obviously there was nothing wrong with it. It was fun. So this book takes the point of view of a young woman who gets bitten by a werewolf in the very first chapter. She's at a party, and she meets up with an old, not really boyfriend, but friend. They were like best friends in high school, and they decide to go on a date. So they exchange information and whatnot. And as she's walking away, something in the woods chases her, and it bites her, and she becomes a werewolf. And so so it's interesting how becoming a werewolf affects her life. And I ultimately I had a lot of fun listening to this whole book. And I honestly, I can't wait to read more Rachel Harrison. I think she's going to become a favorite. I need to read maybe one or two more before I make that decision, but I'm pretty confident. All right. Next, I read The Fatal Mind by N.J. Gallegos. Now, I read this again for an interview. She contacted me she wanted me just to review the book, and I went and looked her up, and what intrigued me was that she's a doctor. She's not just a doctor; she's an ER doctor, and she writes books. And I was like, okay, I have to talk to her. I want to talk to her mostly on how she manages her time and her energy for doing this. And so I asked her. I got back to her, and I was like, yeah, of course, I'll talk about your book, but would you mind coming on the channel and talking with me about your writing and whatnot? And she agreed. So I had a blast talking with her, and she's appeared to have a good time talking to me as well. But the book itself, The Fatal Mind, is a lot of fun. It's the main character is a doctor. No, she's not. The main character, there's like, the doctor I was thinking of is Dr. Absinthe, which is an interesting name. She's not necessarily the main character, but she's one of the main characters. The other main character is a basketball player who got injured during a basketball game, and he suffered serious debilitating migraine headaches ever since. And of course, he learns about Dr. Absinthe because she puts chips in the back of people's skulls, people who suffer from migraines, and makes the headaches go away. But Dr. Absinthe is noticing that some of her older patients are having these violent breakdowns. So she has to sort of figure out what's going on and whether or not, everyone's going to be affected by this. And she also has some moral choices that she has to make, that maybe she fails at, maybe she succeeds. I don't know. You're going to have to read it and find out. But this book is also a lot of fun. It was fun following the basketball player as he kind of descends into a rage-filled insanity, and Dr. Absinthe as she kind of goes down her own rabbit hole, and it was just a lot of fun. All right, another interview. I've been busy with interviews this fall. I got to talk to David Surface, and we talked about his recent collection of short stories, These Things That Walk Behind Me. This was a great collection of short stories. If you like strange, sort of Twilight Zone-esque, I would say. Some of them were Twilight Zone-esque. Some of them were more like creep show type stories or Tales from the Crypt. If you like those types of stories, then I highly recommend that you go and check out These Things That Walk Behind Me, because these stories, they're all very horror, but they play around with horror genre. Some of them are weird fiction, some of them are just strange, like Twilight Zone, and some of them are just out and out horror. I love this collection. It'll be one of my favorite collections for sure. And lastly, but not least, for October, I read Wendy's Button Box by Stephen King and Richard Chizmar. I've been meaning to read this for a long time, And I have to say that I really enjoyed this short story. It felt very Stephen King to me. Uh, Not to say that Richard Chizmar didn't write any of this book. I've read some of other Richard Chizmar books, and well, I've read the one Chasing the Boogeyman, and it had a strong Stephen King feel to it as well. So mostly in style. So I could see their styles meshing together quite well, and honestly, I really enjoyed it. I don't know what the verdict is in people who've read this book, if they like it or if they hate it, but I thought it was good, and I want to read. It's a series apparently, so I want to continue reading those books and see where it goes. All right, so there you have it. What I read in October. I apologize for being so late, but hopefully you've enjoyed your time here with me. And if you have, leave me a cup of coffee down there in the darkness, and I'll leave you some coffee in return. And thank you. Keep being safe, my friends. Keep being weird. And most importantly, keep being creative. I'll catch you guys in the next bookish video.